Welcome back, friends. You're just in time for the Johnny Brew Show.
What's going on, everybody? My name is John Brookhagen, host of the Johnny Brew Show, and welcome back. I'm really happy you're here. We're here to talk about all the things you may be seeing on the news, but we're going to give you the Johnny Brew narrative, which is simply logic and obvious facts. All right? In this particular portion is brought to you by The Meltdown with Darian Anthony. I want to thank Darian for helping us out, and if you like your Bible conflated with your culture and your politics, check out The Meltdown with Darian Anthony, and we're all waiting with bated breath for Rick Charles to finally publish a podcast. He's supposed to be doing a weekly thing, a little supplement to the Johnny Brew Show, not necessarily, but I'm sure it will be, and we're all waiting, Rick, so get up off your butt and get to work. All right, also, anytime you want to get in touch with us, 702-682-9983, or just email TheJohnnyBruShow@gmail.com. And finally, I have to remind you every time, please click subscribe on the bottom of the YouTube. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating and a subscription, would you please? All right, in this segment, we're going to talk about the girl who, I'm not even going to say a name, but she was on the pedestal when she became an alternate for the United States Olympic team in the... what's the big ball that you throw? It's not the hammer. Oh, the hammer throw. That's it. Not the javelin, the hammer throw. And, this girl came in third place, and they were supposed to play the national anthem. Now, just a little bit of background on what actually happened that day is, they just play each country's national anthem here or there, depending on what's going on. It wasn't being played as part of a medal ceremony or a podium ceremony. It just happened that when those three girls were on the podium, they played the national anthem. Two of them acted appropriately, and one of them threw a hissy fit as if, how dare you play my country's national anthem when I've just won a spot to represent my country. I mean, being that it wasn't actually supposed to be played when they were on the podium, I would think that you would find that a blessing. Oh my God, I'm on the podium. I just won a spot on the Olympic team, and now they're playing the national anthem. I mean, how much more proud and representative can you be? But we all know what she did on the podium. And we also know Deanna Price, first place. She will be proudly representing our great country. Brooke Anderson came in second place. And they will be the two fine young women representing the United States in the Olympics in the hammer throw. This other girl might get a plane ticket, not if Patriots have anything to do with it, to go there and just in case one of them pulls a hamstring or something, then she'll get to fill in for them. Nonetheless, I haven't seen this so much, so I just want to give her a chance to explain where she's coming from. This is the explanation of why she turned her back on the American flag when winning a spot to represent us. Play tape.
Originally, we were not even supposed to be on the podium during the singing or the playing of the national anthem. When we were back in the call room, the directions were that we were going to be introduced to the crowd before the anthem was going to be played or after the anthem was going to be played. No one made any mention or any notion that we would be on the podium or had to be on the podium during the singing of the national anthem. I want to make that clear. Those were our directions, either before or after. No other event group that I know of stood on the podium during the playing of the national anthem. However, when we went out to introduce ourselves to the crowd, coincidentally, the national anthem was playing and they asked us to stand on the podium, and then the anthem played. In that moment, I feel like it was a setup because those were not the directions. That was not the intent. The intent was we would be introduced to the crowd either before or after the singing of the national anthem. In which if we had that option, or if I knew that I was going to be on the podium, I would have chose something else.
Now, I just want to ask, what is it about the national anthem or that whole scenario that made you feel so uncomfortable? Why didn't you want to, acknowledge that part?
History. If you know your history, you know the full song of the national anthem. The third paragraph speaks to slaves in America, our blood being slain and pilchered all over the floor. It's disrespectful and it does not speak for Black Americans. It's obvious. There's no.
All right. I think I should, I'm here to educate, right? All right. Let me explain to you some of the backlash behind the third verse of the national anthem. I know you guys, I was singing to you guys last time. I forget what I was singing. But I know you guys loved my singing, but I'm not going to sing this to you because I want to get through it. And the national anthem is, a 90 second or a 2-minute song. But the third verse of the national anthem says, "And where is that band who so vauntingly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country, should leave us no more? Their blood was washed out, their foul footsteps pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the star-spangled banner in triumph doth wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave." All right? And when I first read it, I didn't exactly understand the full context, and I was able to find an article which outlines exactly what was meant by it. So let me just give you a little bit of background. This was written in the Washington Post in October of 2020, so almost a year ago. And this explains why the Star-Spangled Banner didn't necessarily become our national anthem for like a century, or I think it opines why it didn't become the national anthem, and explains why some people like this misled young lady thinks it's a racist thing to say. It was September 1814, and we were in the middle of the War of 1812. All right, the British had just taken and lit on fire the White House. And the conflict, was called the War of 1812, and we were in its third year. The British had taken prisoners, and one of the prisoners they took was a doctor from Maryland. And a friend of this particular doctor was a lawyer named Francis Scott Key. So Francis Scott Key went out to the Navy ship with a white flag, and he approached the British Navy ship and tried to start a prisoner trade or some sort of release in order to get his friend, who was a doctor, out of their POW camp, which happened to be on this naval ship. And the meeting was successful. And the British agreed to release the doctor, as well as Francis Scott Key, the gentleman who went to negotiate. Then a big battle started. And while he was, this was in Baltimore, overlooking Baltimore. And I think it's kind of by the Severn River and where the Naval Academy is now and all this great stuff. And so he was forced to stay on this British naval ship during the battle. And it was a fierce battle. And he wasn't able to see everything. He was obviously in a prisoner ship, which is also a commander ship. So he was pretty far away from the action. But he could hear the death and the destruction and the explosions and everything that was going on around him. And then when the sun came up the next morning, he was able to finally realize that the Americans had won this battle because he saw the American flag flying over the battlefield, and the battle was over. So he understood that the Americans had won this really, really important battle, and that's when he penned the Star-Spangled Banner. A really, really nice story. So that's how he wrote it. And then a couple of things. The British people had this thing of impressment, where they would try to convince people in America to fight on their side. And it was for a whole variety of different people, whether it's small business owners, they agreed to give them land when the war was over. Slaves, they encouraged slaves to escape and fight for the British. And if they did so, they would give them their freedom and some land. And so in this passage, when Francis Scott Key writes, no refuge could save the hireling and slave. He was saying that because he was witnessing the battle and he saw the people. So not only were there British soldiers, but there were also Americans who were considered hirelings, say a small business owner who was going to abandon America and flee with the British, or the slaves who were going to run away and fight for the British and then get their freedom and some land afterwards. And Francis Scott Key saw also these people fighting for the British. So not only were the British getting killed, their blood washed out and all this stuff, but also the Americans or the slaves of America who were fighting with the British, they were also getting their butts kicked in this battle. So he was just talking about slaves getting their butts kicked because they had left America and went to fight for the British. One last thing to add to this is that the British, while most of the slaves that ended up fighting for the British, a lot of them died, the ones that did survive did have their promises kept. And they were given land, and I believe it's Trinidad and Tobago. They were given small pieces of land over there as part of the agreement. I'm trying to look exactly or confirm that it was Trinidad and Tobago. Oh yes, here it is. Whether manipulation or not with the slaves, the British kept their word, and they called them colonial marines. After the war, refusing the United States' demand that they be returned, and provided those ex-slaves with land in Trinidad and Tobago to resettle with their families, their descendants, and they were called Americans. Get it? They came from America, and they're kinsfolk of that place. So these Americans still live in Trinidad and Tobago today. Now, I don't know who's happier. Do you think the descendants of slaves who fought in the War of 1812 and still live in America today have a better life? Or do you think the slaves that escaped, fought for the British for their freedom, and got their land in Trinidad and Tobago and still live there today, do you think they have a higher quality of life and, percentages over the poverty line and yada, yada, yada? I mean, I could nip this argument right in the bud and explain to you that black people have the highest standard of living in America than in any other country. And there is more black wealth in America than almost all the other countries combined. So I'm guessing black people in America today have a better life than the black people in Trinidad and Tobago do today. So the black slaves that earned their freedom were freed by patriots or were finally freed, all of them ultimately on Juneteenth, but officially during the Emancipation Proclamation released by Abraham Lincoln in, I believe it was 1863. So nonetheless, this is what Francis Key said. He said the slaves and the small business people, the people who left America to fight with the British. Now, I could understand the slaves escaping and fighting for the British more than the small business owners fighting for the British. But nonetheless, these people who fought against America got killed, and they were their blood washed out, their foul footsteps pollution. No refuge could save the hireling or the slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. It doesn't sound like he's saying F black people or, you should be a slave or anything like that. He's mentioning something that happened historically, and guess what? Without this going on, you wouldn't have learned this little slice of American history revolving around the War of 1812. But I do not see that verse as being racist or pro-slave or anti-slave or anything else. Now, before I move on, I do have to say one more disclaimer. It does seem that Francis Scott Key was a slave owner and could very quite possibly have been a racist. But that doesn't make his song any less heartfelt or meaningful to our country today. All right? Just because, Andrew Jackson did horrible things to Indians, it doesn't mean he wasn't a great American and single-handedly helped us win the Battle of New Orleans. All right? Just because George Washington owned slaves and before dying, released all his slaves, just because Martha Washington inherited a lot of slaves, does not mean they weren't great patriots and did great things to further the abolition of slavery. And it doesn't mean that they weren't raging racist. I don't know. Everybody needs to be judged on their own merit. And unfortunately, all these people are dead, so I can't bring them into the Johnny Bruce Show and interview them. Nonetheless, a little history lesson. And I don't even want to talk about this anymore. You know why? Because there are great Americans. All right? Again, let me tell you. It was... I lost it. What was her name? Darn it. Deanna Price or something like that. Anyway, they were very proud to stand for the national anthem. And then, I don't know if you caught on my last segment, I was talking a lot about how you can't find stuff that happened on the internet. They're erasing our history. All right, I've told you this story a dozen times. I'll briefly say it one more time. 5 pediatricians went on NBC News morning show, and they talked about the coronavirus in August of 2020. And when the host asked each pediatrician, will you be sending your kids back to in-person learning despite the coronavirus? All 5 of those pediatricians said, absolutely. And it was a very important moment in media for me to show parents that these pediatricians on a liberal progressive news station are saying to the progressive host they will absolutely be sending their kids to school despite the pandemic that we're going through. You can't find that online. I remember multiple times seeing pictures of young kids. One time it was at a car race. The kids were running with their nachos and their hot dogs, and nobody was with them. It was just 2 unsupervised kids running back to their parents in the stands. They started playing the national anthem. Both kids stopped, put their food down, and put their hands on their hearts and sang along with the national anthem. They were videotaped candidly. I looked high and wide for that story, couldn't find it. I remember there were still photos of these 2 American kids who were managers for the football team. And they were going to get football equipment for the team managers and everything else. And while they were running, doing their duties and nobody was watching them, they stopped in respect for the playing of the national anthem. While I wasn't able to find the video or the photos of them doing this, I was finally, after a lot of hard work, actually my son found it for me after I had a little nervous breakdown because I couldn't find it anywhere. My son found this article highlighting these 2 special kids. So this is the best I could do for you. This is a news story played locally about these 2 kids who stopped in their tracks in order to show their respect for the flag. Play tape.
That look is a look that can only happen by a roaring fire at a verbal.
2 students from Izard County were recognized for their patriotism towards the American flag. Adam Jones drove down to Melbourne to get their story.
Aiden and Clayton are 8th graders in the Melbourne School District. Both boys are on the junior high football team and managers for the high school team.
I'm the T-boy and the ball boy. And the iPad.
Yeah, I hold this iPad so the coach can see what the plays were, see who messed up.
Last week, the high school team played Prescott. The boys were in a rush to get things off the bus, but once the national anthem started...
We were running to the thing, the national anthem came on. We set it down, we did the national anthem.
Put your hands over your hearts?
Yeah, like the.
I did the whole thing like that. A Prescott fan took notice of the boys and decided to send a letter to the school saying that in this time of turmoil, it was nice to see two young men showing respect for our country.
The national anthem was playing. Although I couldn't hear it yet from the parking lot, I could clearly see from the action of these young men that they were standing behind the buses right beside our old gym. I don't even know if they could see the flag.
What? I couldn't find the flag. I just looked in like the direction of the field goal because I thought it was behind there.
When I asked the boys what they thought of the national anthem, this is what they had to say.
I think it's respectful because the people that fought for our country, they deserve that because they fought for our country, and that's how we represent them.
All right, first of all, a big kudos to the parents, man. They're bringing up their kids right, talking about how you got to show respect for our forefathers and our fallen soldiers who gave us this freedom and so on and so forth. And also, I want to point out the difference between character and integrity. Character is what you do when people are watching. When you know somebody's watching and you pick up that trash or litter, or you know they're watching and you stand up straight to salute our flag. But with these kids, they were unseen. They didn't think anybody could see what they were doing. And they didn't do it for accolades or glory or any other reason. They have integrity. That is what you do when nobody's looking. And that's what the most important thing is. And that's why it's important that we commend these kids. Can we just see the end? Fast forward to 152 and see the little bit of an end.
Kids are great kids. It would have been very easy for them to just continue with what they're doing or been goofing off during it, thinking nobody was watching. So for those kids to take that time and be respectful, as a coach, it's something that makes me very proud.
Exactly. I mean, what more could you want as a coach or a parent or an adult in your community to see these kids not knowing that anybody's even looking and showing that kind of patriotism and respect for our flag. Finally, I want to end this segment with one of the greatest athletes ever to grace this world, ever to be seen in the Olympics. This guy, I watched every time he raced. Everybody around the entire world got together to watch this guy race. He was absolutely incredible. And he's not an American. This guy is from Jamaica. His name is Usain Bolt. And anybody older than 5-6 years old knows who Usain Bolt is. I think he started the dab, right? He was the first one to do it. And he is just full of personality. The most incredible athlete, faster than Carl Lewis, which not many people are faster than Carl Lewis, right? And speaking of Carl Lewis, since I brought up his name, what did he do in the 30s when America was somewhat a racist country with a lot of systematic racism where it actually existed then as it does not now? Well, what did he do? He saluted our flag. He went to Berlin and he stood up tall and he represented our country and kicked ass and won a gold medal and shoved it right in Hitler's face. That could be my favorite Hitler moment of all time. But let's take a look at Usain Bolt. He's being interviewed after, another one of his victories, which every time he put on a pair of shorts, he was victorious. And the United States National Anthem comes on, and this is how he reacts while he's in the middle of a video, one of my favorite pieces of media I've ever seen. Play tape.
Song, we should invent new words to talk about you. Help us.
Well, I would say a new word. Lightning bolt is good enough for me. It was all about business today. I came out to defend my title, and that's what I did.
You came here to be a legend. You are already a legend.
Could we cut the interview? Is it live?
Yeah, okay. So, yes, let's dance.
National Anthem.
Sorry. El himno nacional.
All right. I mean, first of all, what a class act, man. It's not even his. I mean, when I go to a hockey game and they play the Canadian national anthem, I show my respect for that country. I mean, this is a guy who's in the middle of an interview promoting his brand. He's at a meet where they're probably playing national anthems constantly, where it's just a common occurrence every time somebody wins the high jump, somebody wins the pole vault, somebody wins the, 50 meter, 200 meter dash, whatever the case may be. It's probably just a regular occurrence. So for him to do that interview, you saw the reporter didn't think twice. She heard the national anthem. She thought he wanted to dance. She didn't even realize the respect he was trying to show until he shut up and looked up at the flag. And let me tell you something. I am a red-blooded American, and I always obviously cheer for America in the Olympics. But I'll tell you right now, if it's this idiot from America or Usain Bolt competing in the hammer throw, I'll root for Usain Bolt every time. All right? Because that guy is a class act. He shows me and my country respect. And for the rest of my life, I will show him respect because he is what athletics are all about. Speaking of athletics, Sunday morning, the 4th of July, we are going to have quite the athlete who's going to try to take that winning attitude, that competitiveness, and that patriotism to Nevada District 4. That's right. I'm going to introduce somebody to you that a lot of you might not know enough about. Tony Lane, who will be a Republican candidate for Nevada District 4, is going to be joining me, and that interview will be released Sunday morning on the 4th of July. So, make sure you subscribe so that way you're the first person who gets to see it. I'm really excited about this interview, and we have a bunch of really great interviews coming up. Starting off with Tony Lane. If you didn't see the Valeria Gurr interview, you got to go check that out. And please, let us know what you think in the comments about my little history lesson, about the Star Spangled Banner, about Usain Bolt versus this other girl. How about the other two girls who came in first and second? Tell me how much you're going to be cheering for them. And finally, don't forget about Infinity the Math Institute. Summer classes are about to start. It's the best product we have to offer. Every kid who takes the month-long summer class at Infinity goes into the next school year having the best school year of their entire life. And it brings on a love and a passion for math and an understanding that they can do it. Because a lot of times, confidence is all these kids need. All right? My name is John Brookhagen. Please like, subscribe, the podcast, the YouTube channel, the Facebook page. I'm thrilled. I love you guys. Thanks for helping me grow. And I'll see you next time. Don't forget about all the fun stuff we got going on. John Brookhagen, The Johnny Brew Show.